In the sprawling empire of Persia, where power gleams like polished gold and danger lurks in every shadow, a Jewish orphan named Hadassah, known as Esther, steps into a destiny that will shake the foundations of history. Exiled in the capital of Susa, the Jewish people live under the iron rule of King Xerxes, a monarch whose whims could mean life or death. Esther, raised by her cousin Mordecai, is a young woman of striking beauty and unshakable resolve, her heart forged in the fires of loss and faith. What begins as a quiet life in the margins explodes into a high-stakes drama of courage, deception, and divine timing, with the fate of an entire people hanging in the balance. The story kicks off with Xerxes flexing his empire's might, hosting a 180-day extravaganza to showcase Persia's wealth palaces dripping with opulence, wine flowing like rivers. At the end, he throws a week-long feast for all of Susa, the air thick with revelry. On the seventh day, deep in his cups, Xerxes summons Queen Vashti to parade her beauty before his guests, a trophy to cap his display of power. Vashti, defiant, refuses to be a proppy. Her rebellion sends the king into a rage, and his advisors, sensing a threat to patriarchal order, urge him to act, depose her. They say, or every woman in Persia will think she can defy her husband. Vashti's crown is stripped, her name erased from the palace, and Xerxes launches a search for a new queen, a beauty pageant spanning the empire. Young women, the fairest of the land, are swept into the royal harem under the watch of Haggai, the king's trusted eunuch. Among them is Esther, plucked from her humble life with Mordecai. He warns her, keep your Jewish identity locked down. Don't breathe a word of your heritage. It's a calculated move in a world where being different can be a death sentence. For a year, Esther undergoes beauty treatments, oils, perfumes, lessons in poise, preparing for one night with the king. When her moment arrives, she walks into Xerxes' court, and the room holds its breath. Her beauty is radiant, but it's her grace, her quiet strength, that seals the deal. Xerxes is captivated, placing the royal crown on her head. Esther, the orphan, is now queen of Persia. Her true identity is secret buried deep. While Esther navigates the gilded cage of the palace, Mordecai lingers at the king's gate, the pulse of Susa's political intrigue. He overhears two guards, Bigthan and Teresh, plotting to assassinate Xerxes, quick on his feet. Mordecai relays the intel to Esther, who passes it to the king, crediting her cousin. The plot is confirmed, the traitors are hanged, and the deed is recorded in the royal annals. Mordecai's loyalty goes unrewarded for now. A forgotten footnote in the king's chronicles. Enter Haman, an Agagite with ambition as venomous as a viper. Xerxes elevates him to prime minister, second only to the throne, and orders all to bow before him. At the king's gate, officials drop to their knees except Mordecai. A Jew, he bows to no man, only to God. Haman's ego, fragile as glass, shatters at the slight. His rage doesn't stop at Mordecai. He decides to eradicate every Jew in Persia, a genocide to soothe his wounded pride. Casting lots, called Pur. In Hebrew, he picks the 13th day of Adar, the 12th month, as the day of slaughter. Haman slinks to Xerxes with a lie. There's a people in your empire, scattered and disloyal, who defy your laws. They're a threat. Let's wipe them out. And I'll bankroll it with 10,000 talents of silver. Xerxes, blind to the stakes, hands Haman his signet ring, granting unchecked power. The decree flies out by courier to every corner of the empire. kill all Jews' men, women, children, and seize their wealth. Susa reels in confusion. But Haman and Xerxes sit back, sipping wine as if they've just signed a trade deal. Mordecai hears the edict and unleashes his grief, tearing his clothes, donning sackcloth, and wailing through the streets. Across Persia, Jews fast, weep, and pray, their survival on the line. Esther's maids rush to her with the news, and her heart cracks. She sends Mordecai fresh clothes, but he rejects them, his pain too raw for comfort. Through Hathach, a loyal eunuch, Mordecai lays out the horror, Haman's plot, the silver, the decree. He hands over the edict's text and pleads, "Esther, go to the king, beg for our people." Esther hesitates, her voice tight. You know the law. Anyone who approaches the king uninvited dies unless he extends his scepter. I haven't been called in a month. Mordecai's response is a thunderbolt. Don't think your crown will save you. If you stay silent, deliverance will come another way. But you and your family are finished. What of your queen for this exact moment? The words sear into her soul. Esther steels herself and sends back, "Gather Susa's Jews, fast for me 3 days. No food, no water, my maids and I will too. Then I'll face the king. Law be damned. If I die, I die." On the 3rd day, Esther dons her royal robes, every inch a queen, and steps into the forbidden inner court, her pulse hammering like a war drum. Xerxes, seated on his throne, catches sight of her. The air crackles. Will he raise the scepter or call for her head? His face softens, the golden scepter lifts, and Esther breathes. "What's your wish?" "Queen Esther," he asks, "up to half the kingdom. It's yours." She plays it deftly, inviting him and Haman to a private banquet. At the feast, Xerxes presses, "Name your desire." Esther, measured, says, "Come back tomorrow with Haman for another banquet. I'll tell you then." Haman leaves, puffed up, his arrogance blinding him to the storm brewing. But at the king's gate, Mordecai stands tall, unbowed, and Haman's rage reignites. At home, he brags to his wife, Zeresh, and his cronies about his wealth, his sons, and his exclusive invite with the royals. But that Jew Mordecai, he spits. "He's a thorn in my side." Zeresh's solution is chilling. Build a 75-foot pole, get the king to impale Mordecai on it, then enjoy your banquet. Haman grins, ordering the pole erected under the stars. That night, sleep eludes Xerxes. He calls for the royal annals, and a scribe reads of Mordecai's unsung heroism in foiling the assassination plot. What reward did he get? Xerxes asks. Nothing. His attendants reply. Dawn breaks, and Haman struts into the court, itching to pitch Mordecai's execution. Before he can speak, Xerxes asks, "How should I honor a man who's earned my favor?" Haman, assuming it's him, lays out a lavish plan. Dress him in your royal robes, set him on your horse with a crest, and have a noble parade him through Susa, proclaiming, "This is the king's chosen." Xerxes nods. Perfect. Do it for Mordecai. Haman's world tilts. Swallowing his pride, he parades Mordecai through the streets, the cheers for his enemy like knives in his chest. He slinks home, head low, only to be summoned to Esther's second banquet. At the feast, Xerxes leans in. "Esther, what's your request?" She rises, her voice ablaze. "If you cherish me, grant me my life and my peoples. We've been sold for slaughter, doomed to die." Xerxes' eyes narrow. Who dared this? Esther's gaze locks on Haman. This vile enemy? Haman. The room freezes. Haman's terror is palpable, his schemes crumbling. Xerxes storms into the palace garden, fury blazing. Haman, desperate, pleads with Esther, stumbling onto her couch just as Xerxes returns. "You'd assault my queen in my house." The king roars. Guards seize Haman, and one mentions the pole meant for Mordecai's. "Impale him on it." Xerxes commands. Haman's fate is sealed, his body dangling from his own trap. That day, Xerxes gifts Haman's estate to Esther, who reveals Mordecai as her cousin. The king slips his signet ring onto Mordecai's finger, and Esther names him overseer of Haman's wealth. But the original decree still stands. Royal edicts can't be revoked. Esther falls before Xerxes, tears streaming, begging him to save her people. He grants her and Mordecai authority to issue a counter-decree. Mordecai pens an edict, sealed with the king's ring, allowing Jews to arm and defend themselves on the 13th of Adar. Couriers blaze across the empire, delivering hope. When the day arrives, the Jews rally, their enemies paralyzed by fear. In Susa, they strike down 500 men and Haman's 10 sons. Taking no plunder, Esther requests one more day to secure the city and to display the sons' bodies. The king agrees, and the Jews prevail, slaying 75. Those and foes across Persia, their restraint a testament to their purpose. On the 14th, they rest, feast, and celebrate, naming the holiday Purim after the Perhaman cast. Mordecai decrees it an annual festival of joy, food sharing, and charity, a tradition etched into Jewish life. Mordecai rises to second in command, a champion for his people, while Xerxes' empire hums along. Esther's legacy, though, burns brightest. From an orphan in exile, she became a queen who faced death with iron resolve, outsmarted a genocidal plot, and saved her nation. Her story is a beacon. Courage isn't loud. It's the quiet choice to stand, to act, to risk it all when the moment demands.